Welcome, welcome, welcome. Good to see everyone here at Cloudway's first ever virtual event, the Prepathon. Seeing lots of high fives and celebratory emojis in chat. Welcome. Really glad to have everyone here. If you're a digital agency, e-commerce, a store owner, a small business, a medium business, if you're here to learn about how to take advantage and get the most out of this year's holiday season and prepare for 2024, and just put your business in the best possible space, you are in the right place. So seeing lots of hellos in chat. If you want to introduce yourself on chat, we'd love to have you say hi. Let us know where you're connecting from, what kind of business you're running today. We're going to be introducing our very first speaker here in just one moment. My name is Brent Weaver. I'm the founder of UGURUS. We're a business coaching and training company, and I'm going to be one of the many hosts that you're going to be privileged to enjoy over the next 3 days of content, learning, connection, networking, and so much more. So for myself and the Cloudways and DigitalOcean team, we couldn't be happier to welcome you to this year's event. We are here to support you in your business's growth, learning, and just help inspire you in these very uncertain times. And there's so much opportunity out there, and we're going to have a great opportunity to connect. So seeing in chat, lots of folks here from global audience, Morocco, India, Nigeria, Pakistan, Netherlands. We've got folks from all over the world, Poland. So a couple folks from the US here. Great to have you all here today. I'm going to be looking over chat as we're going to get into Mark's presentation here. So feel free to engage, explore the event platform. But we're really excited to be welcoming Mark Schaefer. He's our very first speaker for our Prepathon this year. And he is a marketing strategist, an author of Marketing Rebellion, also the author of a book called Known and Belonging to the Brand. He's a social media marketing influencer through various TED Talks, as well as consulting for global brands. Today, Mark's going to be talking to us about how to stay relevant in an uncertain world. So let's all give Mark a warm round of chat applause. Maybe get those emojis going there. Very cool. Mark, welcome to the program. Good to have you with us. You're going to be kicking us off today here at the Prepathon. So excited to have you sharing your content with the world today.
Awesome. Well, I'm honored to be here, and I wanted to mention that thanks to Cloudways for sponsoring this. I've actually been a customer of Cloudways for 5 years, so I'm walking the talk here. This is as a company, I love a company I believe in, and I'm honored to be here. Hello to all my friends and some new friends from around the world.
Very nice. Good to have you here, Mark.
Okay. All right. So this is a new technology for me. Hopefully this will work. So as Brent said, what an exciting time, and in some ways, what a scary time. Over the Prepathon, over the next few days, you're going to be hearing a lot of cool ideas about technology and innovation and new ideas that you can use today. But today, I'm going to talk about you. I'm going to talk about how do you stay relevant in this crazy world that we're living in. So this is a chart that sort of blew my mind. I don't know if you feel the same way I do, but I feel a little overwhelmed by everything that's going on right now. This chart is showing that from where we are today and our perception of technological change, 5 years from now, it's going to be 32 times greater than where we are today. Is that true? It's hard to project. But even if it's off by 15%, 16 times is a lot to handle. So today, I'm going to be talking about some ideas of how we handle this. These are culled from 2 books that I wrote. One is the best-selling book on personal branding called Known, and also a newer book called Cumulative Advantage. I sort of mashed up some of these ideas today to talk about how we stay relevant in this world. So not only is the world changing, it's changing fast. Now, this chart is really hard to see. Don't worry about trying to interpret it. But basically what this is showing, that the time frame it's taking technology to be as good as humans is speeding up. What used to take years is now taking months. And that's one of the reasons why I think that last chart might be true, because things are speeding up at an unprecedented pace. And here is the reality. It's not going to get any better. It's not going to get any easier. This day, this moment we're spending together right now, this is the slowest moment of technological change we will ever experience. And so it's sort of daunting to figure out, how do we connect with that? How do we stay relevant in this kind of world? Now, not only is the world changing fast, it's changing in unexpected ways. I could say that the three things that have impacted business the most over the last 2 years are wars, a pandemic, and a ship getting stuck in the Suez Canal. None of us could really have predicted that. So that makes our job even harder. Now, let's talk about AI. I'm sure that's going to be a big subject over the next few days. It's projected many people here are in sales, marketing, and technology, and that is going to have an impact on our skill sets, on our careers. AI is nipping at our heels of our skill sets. But here's an interesting insight that I had from a friend of mine, Shelley Palmer. Shelley is a very famous tech analyst. And whenever ChatGPT came out, I had to find out what he thought about it. I talked to him. I did an interview with him. He said, Mark, I tried ChatGPT and I am terrified. I've blogged every day for the last 15 years, and I asked ChatGPT to write a blog post in my voice on a subject matter of the challenges that Facebook, the legal challenges that Facebook is facing in the US Congress. It did a perfect job. I could put it on my blog. He said, I'm 80% replaced. Now, on the surface, you might think, oh my gosh, that is terrifying. But here's the more important part. What's the 20%? What's the 20% that is going to make Shelley viable? It's his personal brand. He is known in the world. He's trusted. He's beloved. He doesn't have to worry about AI. People will always read his blog. They'll always listen to his podcast. They'll always read his books. I feel the same way because people know me. I looked at some of the people on our webinar today. I see many friends that I know around the world. Why are they here? Because they want to hear from me, because they know it's really me. They're going to hear something authentic. And that's something AI and all this technological change can never take away from us. Are you known? All right. So let's talk a little bit about this. How does this work? And what can you practically do to be relevant in this world? Whether you're working for a company and you're working on a brand for your company, or you're working on your own personal brand, your career is a journey of relentless relevance. One of my favorite brands is Coca-Cola. Coca-Cola is a product sold in probably almost every country represented here today, beloved in almost every country here today. And that's a product that doesn't change. It can't change. Here's Coca-Cola's only job. How do we become relevant right now? Not 2 years from now, not 3 years from now. How are we relevant now? So that's the mindset we need to embrace. I look at this, it's like a surfer with a surfboard. To be relevant, the surfer doesn't need a new surfboard, right? You don't need necessarily, the world is changing too fast to keep getting new college degrees, maybe even to keep reading books to keep up, to keep up, right? But you have certain strengths, certain capabilities. You have a heritage. You're known for something. That is the surfboard that's making you successful in the world. You don't need necessarily a new surfboard. You need a new wave. And that's how we remain relevant in the world. So we're going to break this down and talk about the surfboard and the waves, the personal brand and the seams of opportunity that are coming to us every single day. Now, let me give you an example from my own life. This is me the day I tested positive for COVID. I was an early adopter. I got COVID in March of 2020, and I got really sick. I honestly almost didn't make it. I had everything. I had the pressure in my chest. I had a high fever for 15 days in a row. I had chills. I had brain fog. I couldn't read. I couldn't write. I couldn't even understand what my wife was saying. That happens all the time, but that's a story for another day. When I awoke from my fog, I realized that in a period of 48 hours, my business had gone to zero. I had built this amazing career of consulting and speaking and teaching and writing, and everything collapsed. In 48 hours, I had zero. And it made me reflect on, where do I fit in this world? What is my personal brand? I think I'm kind of known as the marketing guy. So I had to reflect, what is my surfboard? Where does the world need me right now? What is the wave of change I need to adopt? I need to adapt to this. And it's this: I am a teacher. I'm a really good teacher in everything that I do, whether it's a webinar like this, or a book, or a blog, or a podcast. I have all this great experience, and I love to teach other people, nurture other people. My job at this stage of my career is to send the elevator back down and teach people and elevate them. But the world didn't need me to teach about marketing. People were trying to protect their supply chain, protect their customers, keep their employees from getting sick. Here's what they needed to learn. How do we get through this thing? How do we handle the anxiety, the stress, the disorientation? I stopped blogging about marketing and completely pivoted to talking about, how are we going to get through? How do we fight to the other side? How do you sell stuff in a pandemic? Is that really something you can do? The content on my blog became so popular, the traffic to my website tripled during the early months of the pandemic. I took all of the popular blog posts. I created a free ebook called Fight to the Other Side. And on the last page of that ebook, I said, if you were inspired by the ideas in this ebook, think how much fun it's going to be bringing Mark to inspire your team on your boring Zoom meetings. That was the scene. That was the new opportunity. Everybody went remote. Everyone went virtual, and they're dying in these meetings. It's so boring. It's so depressing. Within 2 months, I completely turned my business around and actually came close to setting some record months because I was able to shift. So, what do we take from this story? Relevance today. Here's the key. Here's the formula. It's your personal brand applied to fractures in the status quo. What's happening in the world? How are we relevant now? I took what I'm good at, my value in the world, that's my personal brand, and applied it to a change. That change didn't last forever, but it made me relevant at that time, and it helped me get through at a very dark time. So let's break these down. First, I'm going to talk about some practical ideas about defining your own personal brand. How do you become known like Shelley Palmer? First, I want to say, when I talk about known, it's not the same as famous, right? I'm not saying you need to be a TikTok star. I'm not saying you need to be like this. Don't try this at home. This is a very difficult move. A lot of people have gotten hurt trying to bend their head like this. Don't do it. When I talk about known, I mean having the presence, the reputation, and the authority to get your job done. Everyone on this webinar today has a personal brand. When people think of you, what do they think of? When I think of Brent, what do I think of? Oh man, he is a really creative guy. He's a great teacher, right? So that's part of his personal brand. It's what people think about you after lots of different interactions. And creating your personal brand means amplifying you at your best so that you can get more sales, more return calls. If you want to raise money for a charity, getting more donations. So whatever your job is, it means giving yourself the best chance to get your job done. Let me give you just a quick example of how this works. There's a big conference. Some of you probably have heard of this, Social Media Marketing World in San Diego. I'm the only person that's given the closing keynote speech twice. Why? Well, when I was invited to do this, I said, I'm really honored to do this. And then my friend who organizes this event, we started talking about, all the things I did in my career with a big Fortune 100 company years ago. The pioneering work I did on the internet, the awards that I won. I have 7 patents. I had a global marketing team. I created the first internet interfaces in China and South America and Russia. And my friend said, I consider you a friend. I've known you for 8 years. I didn't know about any of this stuff. I said, let me ask you something. Does that matter? The only thing that matters is if I'm known right now. If I'm showing up in the world right now with the president's reputation and authority, and if I went away, you probably wouldn't have hired me, he said. That's exactly right. So I believe the personal brand is everything today. Increasingly, the personal brand is the company brand. So let's get into this a little bit more. How do you start thinking about your surfboard? What do you bring to the table? How do you fit in this ecosystem? First of all, it's got to be congruent with who you are. It's got to be congruent with your values, or it's not going to be sustainable. It's going to be exhausting. You can't be somebody else. It's something that highlights what you're good at, your experience, your heritage, your place in the world, your education, your connections. It could be part of your hobbies and your passions. It should be something that you can own. I'm going to give you a few little exercises next that you can do to start thinking about your personal brand. And one of those is thinking about what you can own in this world. And most of all, it connects to the needs of others. This is a big mistake that I see people make. I look on their website and it's like, I am so good. I am the greatest person that's won all these awards. Nobody cares. Here's what they care about. What is the problem that you solve? That's what I want to know. And how does this person uniquely solve it? That defines your personal brand. It's centered on other people. It's centered on helping, serving, and solving problems for other people. So here are 3 exercises you can do. These are taken from in my book I mentioned at the beginning called Known. There are lots of exercises because here's the thing about a personal brand. It's personal. You can't watch a video and get it. You've got to do the work. So there are lots of exercises in my book. Here's 3 of them that seem to help people a lot. Number 1, how do you finish this sentence? Only I. I also use this when I work with big companies to talk about their marketing strategy. Maybe in a big company, only we. That's really hard to figure out, but you've got to do it because if you can finish this sentence, you'll know why you're different, why people love you, why people buy from you. You'll know who's buying from you, why they're buying from you. You'll know what to say. You'll know where to say it. So this unleashes everything. So I saw this sign, coldest beer in USA on a store. Is it really the coldest beer? Is someone going to go in with a thermometer? But they're saying, this is something we own. If you want the coldest beer, This is the place to be. Here's a friend of mine. He says, I am the internet's favorite teacher. Is he really? Well, he probably is really good. But when I see this, it makes me trust him. It makes me think this is going to be good. He is really a good teacher. This is his place in the world. Here's a woman that works in real estate. She says, I am the happiest person in real estate. Is she really? Sometimes she's been grumpy, but she's the happiest person in real estate. What about this dude? Is he the most trusted voice in marketing? Maybe, maybe not. All right. Here's exercise number 2. What is your speech? Now, let's think about 2 years from now, you have been invited to be a speaker at the Prepathon. People have heard of you. Your personal brand is becoming known. They're excited to hear you. And you are so excited to have this opportunity to speak to all these amazing people from around the world. What would you talk about? What are you bursting at the seams to get out into the world? That's a good clue of what your personal brand can be about, what you can own. Number 3, what makes you come alive? So what have you done in your job that you think, oh my gosh, this is it. I just love this. If I could do this every day, this is why I'm here. So I was helping this young woman with her personal brand. She said, I'm interested in so many different things. I don't know which one to choose. I said, well, tell me what makes you come alive. She said, I love extreme sports like mountain bike riding. And I love most of all, taking people that have never been before, even if they feel afraid. She said, I've experienced a lot of trauma in my life. I do grief counseling for children. I try to give them the courage to face the world in a new way. And she said, I work in HR and I specialize in women's issues in the workplace. And that can be really hard in different places. I said, so what you're saying is you bring people to their point of courage. She said, that's exactly right. That's what I do in all of these things. And that's what makes her come alive. And that's a big part of her personal brand. Now, let's get to part 2. As I do that, I'm going to take a little sip because I'm so excited. I'm burning so many calories here. I hope you're as excited as I am because this is really important. Let's talk about part 2, identifying these fractures in the status quo. What are these changes? How do we see them? Now, when I was a young person in business, in the 90s, this guy and this book dominated. This is Michael Porter. He was a very popular professor at Harvard University, and he wrote this book called Competitive Advantage. If you were in business in the 90s, you read this book. Michael Porter said, basically, if you have a business strategy, you have 5 options. Here are these 5 forces that create your strategy. He was so popular, he created this group called the Monitor Group to help companies all over the world adopt these strategies. Now, don't go out and run this book and buy this book because he was wrong. By 2004, his company was bankrupt. How is this possible? The greatest marketing mind, the greatest strategic mind of our generation went broke. Here's why. Because he didn't anticipate the furious change that was happening because of the internet, because of digital enablement and digital capabilities. So if you pick one lane, you're going to be sunk. You've got to adjust to what's coming at you. As I said, you need to think about how are we relevant today? Where are the opportunities today? So I know I have guests here from all around the world. I'm going to use an illustration, a visualization about American football. But don't worry, it's not hard to understand. So in American football, you have two teams that line up face to face, strength against strength. And the coach is actually above the field and he's looking at the other team. He's saying, is there someone on the other team that's tired or out of place or overmatched? Can we open up a seam? Can we open up a hole and run that ball through that opportunity as far as we can, as long as we can? It may not last forever, but that's the opportunity today. Think about my example. I don't go into boring Zoom meetings anymore. That opportunity has closed, but I was relevant for 18 months being a guest speaker in boring Zoom meetings, and that saved my business. I was relevant in that seam. So a seam is an under-defended opportunity. It's a fracture in the status quo. The status quo is, what we're used to. And all of a sudden, that breaks apart. And every time that breaks apart, whether it's a pandemic, whether it's a boat getting stuck in the Suez Canal, whether it's AI, it opens up something new. There are unmet and underserved customer needs. And maybe that's where we take our personal brand, our relevance. Let's talk about how do we find these opportunities. Here are 3 ways to find seams. Now we're sort of I mentioned that I'm taking a lot of these ideas from 2 different books. Now we're sort of moving away from known into cumulative advantage. How do we find these seams? Okay, now, when I got sick with COVID, my wife also was sick first. She gave the gift that kept on giving. And we were locked into our house for 2 months between the sickness and the quarantine. We couldn't go shopping. So we discovered this service called HelloFresh. They will deliver groceries to your door with recipes, and you use these groceries to make these recipes. Now, we started spending a significant portion of our grocery budget on a food distribution service I didn't even know existed in January of 2020. They started advertising. They realized this was not a new business, but this was a new seam. They were good at delivering fresh groceries and easy recipes to your doorstep. But the pandemic became a new seam and they blew up. Today, we still use HelloFresh occasionally because it's something that we've grown to like. They were able to take their competency, their brand, and apply it to a new seam. So look for new opportunities. Here's one that everybody faces at some point: a reorganization. A reorganization in your company, that's a fracture in the status quo. Another big trend, when I was a young guy in business, was this darn thing called re-engineering. This was another book written by another guy from Harvard. Always seems to be the bane of my existence, I think. So our company embraced re-engineering, which means basically throwing a bomb at every organization and starting over. I had a friend who said, I'm going underground. I'm going to hide. No one's going to see me. I'm going to let this thing pass over me. I said, what are you talking about? The company needs leaders right now. This isn't going to go away. We need to embrace this change and figure out, how do we play a role? So a fracture in the status quo, it doesn't necessarily have to be something big going on in the world. It just has to be something big going on in your world that you can find new relevance. So here's idea number 2. One of the great opportunities of my life, one of the most profound opportunities of my life, is when I was in graduate school, I got to study under a man called Peter Drucker. Peter Drucker is easily the most famous author and consultant in the history of management and marketing. And he changed my life forever. And one of the things he would teach us a lot is to how do we look at complex business problems like a puzzle we're going to solve. And one of the things he would always say is we're trying to figure out these very complex problems. He'd say, is the dog barking? Now, here's what he meant by that. Let's say you have a dog that barks every time someone rings the doorbell. If you hear the doorbell ring and the dog doesn't bark, something has changed that you need to pay attention to. Maybe the dog's sick. Maybe the dog's hurt. Maybe the dog's lost. Maybe the dog's in trouble. Or maybe the dog just knows the person who's at the door. But something has changed. You can't ignore it. And this is a great opportunity for you as you go through the world. And every time you see something in your business, with your customers, or in the news that makes you go, that doesn't really make sense. The dog is barking. Here's an example. In 2012, we have this big company in America called Hallmark. They make greeting cards, paper greeting cards for birthdays, anniversaries, celebrations. In 2012, they said, we are going digital. We're going to create e-greeting cards. Well, that makes sense. Here was the announcement in 2021. Hallmark is getting out of e-commerce and e-greeting cards. What's happening in 2021? It's the pandemic. Everybody's going to e-commerce. No one's going to the store to buy paper greeting cards. Who wants to open a greeting card in the mail that someone licked the envelope in a pandemic? This makes no sense. The dog isn't barking. The dog should be barking, saying, we're doubling down on e-commerce. Hallmark is saying, we're getting out of it. It makes no sense. So when you read down in the article, you find the seam. You find the opportunity. Here's what I learned. There are two big markets for greeting cards. Number one, senior citizens, but they don't like sending computer greeting cards. Number two, Gen Z. Who would have ever thought that? Gen Z, they love sending greeting cards, but they love sending artisanal, handmade, handcrafted cards. They don't want to send computer cards. So this market was shifting. It was changing. If I'm an artist, I'd start a TikTok channel for Gen Z, showing them how to make artisanal greeting cards and selling my cards. It's a seam. See, I'm still excited. I got to take a sip. I got to calm myself down. Now, here's idea number 3. So I worked for a big company that embraced the Toyota production system. So we learned a lot about business techniques in Japan. And one of the words I had to say, people are asking me if it's coffee or tea. It's neither. It's a flavored water. I've had enough coffee. Believe me, if I was drinking coffee, I'd be off the rails right now. You think I'm excited now? You don't want me drinking coffee. Believe me. Okay. So now that you've completely distracted me, I got to get back. Here I am. All right, I'm back. So one of the terms that they use in Japan is gemba. Gemba means if you want to learn what's really going on, you need to get out of your chair, you need to get out of your office and go to where the action is. Maybe it's the plant floor. Maybe it's where your customers are. Maybe it's where your products are being sold. For me, it's South by Southwest. South by Southwest is a conference every year. It's basically a gathering of big thought leaders. And I go there every year. I never want to miss it because this is where the action is. I get inspired there every year. I take ideas from South by Southwest that helps me think about new content, new speeches, new books. I get inspired for the whole year. So think about, where is the action taking place for you? Is it in your customer center? Is it with your salespeople? Is it with technological change? How do you, are there conferences you need to go to try to figure out, where are the seams? Where is the disruptive change? Maybe it's time to get out of your seat and find where those are. Let's talk about some of the obvious seams, some of the obvious changes that are going on in the world. And I just see a comment here that Sufyan Sabiri is saying he knew, or they knew, could be a she, I guess. I apologize, I don't know, that they knew I was drinking flavored water. No way. You didn't know that. I reject that thesis. Okay. So let's talk about some obvious seams that are going on in the world that I think could be relevant for you. This is a study that just came out from Boston Consulting Group, and it did this study that showed that employees who used AI on their white-collar consulting jobs were at least 20% more efficient than people who were not using AI. I mean, this was a scientific study. They used good research methods, and the red bar shows better accuracy and productivity for the people who had a little bit of training on AI. So even the people that had no training on AI, it's just so easy to use, they realized a 20% gain in their productivity. Now, think about applying that to you and your job. This is a seam. This is a fracture in the status quo. This may be the biggest fracture in the status quo in business and marketing that I have seen in my lifetime. When ChatGPT came out, I wrote words I've never written, I've never said in my life. Business has been changed forever today. I didn't say that when the internet came out. It took us years to figure out how the internet would be used for business. I didn't say this with social media. It took us years to figure out how social media could be applied to business. But with ChatGPT, when you put the power of AI in the hands of everyone in a format that's as easy to use as a Google search, it changes everything. Wellness. I don't know what you're seeing in your part of the world, but every day there's stories in America about mental health, about wellness, about stress. Look at what this article in the Wall Street Journal says. Stressed, you're not alone. Nearly a third of Americans report experience symptoms of anxiety or depression. A third. Consumer product companies are taking note, targeting anxious consumers with products, including cars, notepaper, makeup, cereal, beverages that aim to soothe pandemic-fueled consumer anxieties. This is one of the trends that has not gone away. Maybe it's even become worse. We have record levels of isolation, depression, loneliness, not just with Gen Z, not just with children. And this is not something that's just been caused by the pandemic. This is something that's been creeping up for years. So this is a seam. How is this impacting your customers? How could your products help? Could you create a community that helps people, that helps them belong, that could be a branding opportunity for your business? Climate change. This is a study that just came out. I just actually saw this information yesterday. And I put summaries here because I know these charts are sort of hard to see. But for the majority of people today across generations, climate is a personal priority. It's not just something that they're thinking about, it's something that they're talking about. So if this is part of the DNA of your company, if this is part of the DNA of your brand, a lot of people on this call today I know are in the technology business. We're using more and more data centers. Data centers use a lot of energy. They use a lot of water. They give off a lot of heat. How do we reframe our business? How do we reframe our strategy? How do we reframe our communications so that we can be part of the solution? The last theme I want to talk about today is speed. In the very part front, and we're going to have some time, as I said, to answer a few questions. I know that Brent has encouraged people to put questions in the Q&A. I'll be happy to answer as many questions as I can. And so the last theme I want to talk about today is speed, and specifically speed in marketing. So I'm a marketing geek. I love studying everything about marketing. And the marketing world was changed at 8:48 p.m. on February 3rd, 2013. Literally, everything changed in that moment. And here's what it was. February 3rd, 2013 was Super Bowl day in America. There are a billion people, I would say, except for maybe the World Cup. This is the most viewed television event in the world. There were a billion people around the world, an unimaginable number, watching the Super Bowl. The Baltimore Ravens were playing the San Francisco 49ers, and in the middle of the game, the lights went out. Everybody was safe. It was simply a power outage. But there were a billion people watching this television program, and there was nothing to say. And here's what showed up on the screen. This beloved brand, Oreo, created this ad in 10 minutes. They published this to a global television audience and social media. It took them 5 minutes to create the ad, 5 minutes to get it approved by the legal department, which is true. So, it takes the legal, the same amount of time to approve it as it does to create it. But they approved it in 5 minutes, and this showed up on the screen. And I remember being at a Super Bowl party, seeing this ad, and the room gasped. How did they do that? How did they do that? And it, like, all of a sudden set a new standard for marketing. It set a new standard for relevance. What did Oreo do? Oreo has a great surfboard. They're a beloved brand. They're the number one selling cookie in the entire world. But there was a seam. There was this opportunity that they could go through. There's a billion people watching TV, and there was nothing to see. And they created this ad. And now we have this new emphasis on speed. This was a funny picture of a U.S. presidential candidate. This picture went viral all over the internet. Here's what IKEA posted the next day. Get the look. Okay. IKEA had one day to be relevant. If they posted this, if they created this ad and waited a month to get legal approval, nobody would have understood it. They had one day to be relevant. Let's take it even further. Here's where we are today. Being relevant in marketing today can be moments. On the left is an ad taken out by Pepsi for Halloween. We wish you a scary Halloween. They're basically saying, oh, Coca-Cola is scary. Here's what Coca-Cola posted moments later. They took the same picture and they said, that's not a scary costume. That's a cape that a hero wears. Everybody wants to be a hero. Now, this is brilliant, right? But if you can, I think this is a great seam that's in the world today, is that if you can take advantage of speed, this is an opportunity for you to be relevant. So what I want to emphasize today and close with is this idea. Being relevant is taking your personal brand, whether it's your brand or your company brand, and applying it to waves of change, applying it to seams, fractures in the status quo. And if you do this for yourself, you'll not only be helping yourself, you'll also be helping your company. It can result in a more relevant you, a more relevant company. And now I would be happy to take a few questions. You can find more about me at businessesgrow.com. I have a blog that's free. I have a podcast that's free. I have books that are really cheap. It takes me 2 years to research and write a book. You can get 2 years of my life for about $20. Such a deal. So Brent, over to you. Thanks everyone for being here today. And I want to just say just how appreciative of it I am. That I never ever take it for granted when people spend time with me and my content. I'm very, very humbled. I'm very, very honored that you're here today and leaving me so many nice messages. So thank you so much. And Brent, will turn it over to you and the questions.
Yeah, absolutely. Mark, thank you so much. Let's, whether it's in chat or with emojis, let's give Mark a lot of love today. Amazing talk. I've got a ton of screenshots and notes for myself, so that's always a good sign. Quick question from Agung Siddhartha here. I'm going to put this onto our screen. How to create a personal brand for an introvert? I'm sure a lot of us web and programming nerds out there might feel a little bit like we're introverted. We don't want to get on camera or don't want to be out there on stages and stuff. Any tips for folks out there that have this question?
Yeah, absolutely. I know this is going to be hard to believe, but actually, I'm an introvert. I don't do well with people very well. I mean, I speak to large audiences, and I'm surrounded by crowds. But what I really like is just having a dinner with one person or two people and having a nice, quiet conversation. I am an introvert. So, number one is that content really fuels the personal brand. All right. How do you have that presence, authority, and reputation? It's by having some presence on the web through your content, a blog, a video series, a podcast. And there's lots of ways to do that as an introvert. So I have a podcast. Why? People don't really engage with a podcast. You publish it, and that's it. You don't have to talk to people. You don't have to answer questions. Very, very rarely do I get any questions on a podcast. So if you're an introvert, podcasts rule. I also like writing. Writing is something I do alone. It's very cerebral. I can work on a post and put it down, come back the next week, work on it a little bit more in my own little quiet time. So, and here's the last thing I'll say. Originally, I sort of had a theory that maybe extroverts were better at personal brands. And every time I've said something like that, the introverts say, no, everybody has an equal opportunity. I love creating a personal brand because I can do it my way in my time, and I don't have to engage with a lot of people. So it really is equal opportunity.
Love it. Very cool. We're under a little bit of a tight schedule today, Mark, but one quick question from our Cloudways organizers. How has the experience for you been here at the Prepathon for Cloudways?
Yeah, well, as I said, I've been a Cloudways customer for, I'd say, at least 5 years. And I'm very, very happy with that decision. And I just think it's awesome that they're, creating this free opportunity for everybody today. So, and I've, it's been amazing to me. What an amazing opportunity to connect with new friends from all around the world. So please visit me on my website, Follow me on LinkedIn. I'm Mark W. Schaefer everywhere. I follow everybody back, and let's continue the conversation and become new friends.
Very cool. Well, Mark, we so appreciate you being here. There was a ton of questions in chat, so I don't know if you can hang out at all and maybe answer some of those back. We'll try to get those questions answered, and definitely follow Mark. Check out his website, buy his books. As Mark said, cheap way to get everything from his head for the last couple of years. So, Mark, thanks again for being such an amazing guest here at the Cloudways Prepathon.
Thank you, Brent. Thanks to all my friends at Cloudways.
Very nice. Well, we've got a couple more talks coming up for you here. Oliver and Moise will be taking over the stage here in just a moment. While we're hanging out today, though, I want you to make sure you get the most out of the Prepathon. There's a bunch of additional features. We've got the lobby. If you want to see what's coming up in the Prepathon, you can check out the schedule at any time by pressing that schedule button. We're here on the main stage. You'll be seeing lots of great presentations and talks over the next 3 days. You can go to rooms where we have some breakout and interactive opportunities, as well as our expo. And if you haven't yet, update your profile so you can take advantage of the networking feature here on the platform. So you can connect with people and find new relationships, other folks around the world, and have potential one-on-one conversations with them on the platform. So we're really excited to be hanging out with you all. And there's a leaderboard. So whoever has the most engagement, the top 3 users that are the most engaged over the next 3 days, we've got some fun and exciting prizes for you. So keep an eye on those leaderboards over the next couple of days.
Thanks, everyone.
Yeah, good to have you here, Mark. And we should be joined by